Blood trickled between Sarah's fingers as the child convulsed. 3 minutes to decide, follow protocol or break every rule. The relentless summer heat of Phoenix bore down on paramedic Sarah Reeves as she finished another grueling 14-hour shift at Mercy General. 19 emergency calls, 3 cardiac arrests, and a 5-car pileup had left her physically and emotionally drained. All she wanted was to go home, sink into a cool bath, and forget about the weight of human suffering for a few precious hours. Just one more day until vacation, she reminded herself, tugging her sweat-dampened uniform away from her skin as she cut through Madison Park, a shortcut she often took when her legs felt too heavy to walk the extra 4 blocks around it. The park was mostly empty as dusk approached, the unforgiving Arizona sun finally relenting enough for the temperature to drop below 100 degrees. A few joggers hurried to finish their routes, and elderly couples sat on benches beneath the sparse shade of desert willows. Sarah walked along the concrete path, mentally cataloging the items she still needed to pack for her long-awaited trip to the Oregon coast. The faint sound almost didn't register, a whimper perhaps, or a muffled cry. Sarah paused, tilting her head to listen more carefully. There it was again, definite distress, coming from behind the community playground. Her instincts kicked in before exhaustion could override them. She changed direction, moving quickly toward the sound. As she rounded the playground equipment, her heart dropped. A small figure lay crumpled on the ground beside the swing set. A child, a little girl no older than 7, convulsing violently, a thin line of blood trickling from her nose and ears. No adult in sight, no one running for help. Just a yellow backpack decorated with cartoon butterflies lying in the dirt beside her. Sarah dropped to her knees, training instantly overriding fatigue. "Hey there, can you hear me?" she asked, already reaching for the girl's wrist to check her pulse, rapid, thready and dangerously irregular. The convulsions intensified. The child's lips had taken on a bluish tint, her small body rigid between spasms. Sarah quickly but carefully turned her onto her side in the recovery position, clearing her airway and preventing her from choking. "Help," Sarah called out, scanning the park. But the nearest people were too far away to hear, and the park was emptying quickly as darkness approached. She pulled out her phone to call 911, then froze when she saw the time. 7:42 p.m. A chill ran through Sarah despite the heat. The time mattered because she instantly recognized what was happening, and why this wasn't a simple seizure. 3 weeks ago, Mercy General's emergency department had treated 5 children with identical symptoms: seizures, nosebleeds, blue lips, and irregular heartbeats. All of them had attended the same day camp. All of them had drunk from water bottles filled from a contaminated cooler, and all of them had required immediate administration of the antidote, Nurazine, to counteract the industrial chemical that had leached into their water. 2 of those children hadn't made it, not because the hospital didn't have the antidote, but because by the time the ambulance delivered them to the emergency room, it was too late. The toxin had caused irreparable brain damage. Sarah had the antidote in her emergency kit. As part of the team that had treated those children, all first responders had been equipped with Nurazine in case of further incidents. But there was one critical problem: the protocol. After the second child died, the hospital's legal team had implemented strict guidelines. The antidote could only be administered after positive identification of the toxin through blood testing, or with clear evidence of contamination from the same source as the previous cases. Too many variables, they said. Too much risk of administering a powerful drug unnecessarily. The protocol was clear: stabilize, transport, test, then treat. But Sarah knew better. She'd been the one holding the hand of 6-year-old Miguel as the seizures eventually stopped, not because he was getting better, but because his brain had suffered too much damage. She'd looked into his mother's eyes when the doctor delivered the news that he would never wake up, all because protocol had delayed treatment by 17 crucial minutes. The little girl convulsed again, more violently this time. Blood now flowed freely from her nose. Sarah spotted a day camp tag on the yellow backpack: Happy Horizons Day Camp, the same one from the previous incidents. As a paramedic, Sarah's job was to stabilize and transport. The protocol was clear: call an ambulance, take the girl to the hospital, Let the doctors run the tests. Follow the procedure that the hospital board, the lawyers, and the administration had established. But as a human being who had watched children die from this exact protocol, Sarah knew the girl had minutes, not the 40 it would take for an ambulance to arrive, transport to the hospital, and complete the required testing before administering the antidote. Blood trickled between Sarah's fingers as she cradled the child's head. Her professional career, her license, her future, all hung in the balance of this moment. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "but I'm not losing another one." With steady hands that belied her inner turmoil, Sarah reached for her emergency kit. The Nurazine was there in its protective case, a clear solution in a glass vial that represented both salvation and career suicide. She drew the precise dosage into a syringe, swabbed the child's arm, and with a deep breath, pushed the needle through soft skin. "Please work," she murmured, as she administered the antidote. "Please." For 30 agonizing seconds, nothing changed. The seizures continued. The blood still flowed. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, doubt creeping in like a poison of its own. Had she made a catastrophic mistake? Then, like a light switch being flipped, the convulsions began to ease. The rigid muscles relaxed incrementally. The blue tint receded from the child's lips, replaced by a more natural pink. Her breathing, which had been shallow and erratic, deepened and stabilized. Sarah nearly collapsed with relief. She pulled out her phone again, this time to call both an ambulance and the hospital to report what she'd done. As the operator answered, the little girl's eyes fluttered open, confused, frightened, but alive and aware. "Hi there," Sarah said softly, covering the phone speaker. "You're going to be okay. I'm Sarah. I'm a paramedic. Can you tell me your name?" "Maya," the child whispered hoarsely. "Where's my mom?" "We're going to find her, Maya. Don't worry, help is on the way." Sarah completed the call, providing all the necessary details including her direct violation of protocol. The dispatcher's silence spoke volumes, but Sarah couldn't bring herself to care. The little girl was conscious, her vital signs stabilizing by the minute. Within 10 minutes, the ambulance arrived, followed closely by a police cruiser. By then, Sarah had located Maya's emergency contact information in her backpack and called her mother, who was racing to the park in a panic. The day camp had ended at 6 p.m., but Maya's usual pickup person, her grandmother, hadn't arrived. Rather than calling Maya's mother, the inexperienced camp counselor had simply let Maya wait in the playground, where the symptoms had begun to manifest. As the EMTs loaded Maya into the ambulance, a familiar figure approached. Dr. Eleanor Gaines, Emergency Department Chief at Mercy General and the architect of the protocol, Sarah had just shattered. "Reeves, Dr. Gaines," said her voice cold as she pulled Sarah aside. "You administered Nurazine without authorization or confirmation of exposure." It wasn't a question, but Sarah answered anyway. "I did, and I'd do it again. You violated direct protocol. You put that child at risk. You put the hospital at risk. You put your entire career at risk." Each statement fell like a hammer blow. "With all due respect, Dr. Gaines, I saved her life. The protocol would have killed her, just like it killed Miguel Sanchez and Anna Chen 3 weeks ago." Dr. Gaines flinched at the names. "You don't know that. You can't know that without proper testing." "Look at her, doctor." Sarah gestured toward the ambulance where Maya sat upright, talking to a paramedic. 5 minutes ago she was seizing uncontrollably with blood coming from her nose and ears. Now she's conscious and coherent. The camp tag on her backpack is from Happy Horizons, the same camp as our other cases. "This isn't coincidence. That's not for you to decide," Dr. Gaines hissed. "There are procedures, protocols established for a reason. Yes, established to protect the hospital from lawsuits, not to save lives," Sarah retorted, her exhaustion and the adrenaline crash making her bolder than she might otherwise have been. "I became a paramedic to save people, not paperwork." The doctor's face hardened. "Report to administration tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Consider yourself suspended until further notice. Your actions tonight will be thoroughly reviewed by the medical board." Sarah watched Dr. Gaines walk away, the weight of what had just happened settling onto her shoulders. She had likely just ended her career. 8 years of education, training, and service, gone in a single moment of defiance against a protocol she knew was wrong. A small hand tugged at her uniform. Maya stood there, a bandage on her arm where Sarah had injected the antidote, her mother hovering protectively behind her. "Are you the angel who saved me?" Maya asked, her voice small but clear. Sarah knelt down, meeting the child's eyes. "I'm not an angel, sweetheart, just a paramedic doing my job." Maya's mother stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "The other paramedics told me what you did. They said she wouldn't have made it if you'd waited." Her voice broke. "How can I ever thank you?" Sarah glanced toward Dr. Gaines, who was watching the interaction from beside her car. "Just make sure your daughter gets better. That's all the thanks I need." As promised, Sarah reported to administration the next morning, having spent a sleepless night replaying her actions and preparing her defense. She didn't regret what she'd done, couldn't regret saving Maya's life, but the prospect of losing her career left a hollow ache in her chest. The hospital's administrative wing was quiet and cold, the air conditioning cranked to compensate for the summer heat outside. Sarah sat alone in a sterile waiting area, watching the minute hand on the wall clock tick inexorably toward 9 a.m. At precisely 9, the door opened, but instead of the hospital administrator she expected, it was Richard Parker, the CEO of Mercy General himself, accompanied by Dr. Gaines and a man Sarah didn't recognize. "Miss Reeves," Parker said, his tone unreadable. "Please come in." The meeting room was dominated by a large mahogany table. Sarah took the single chair positioned at one end, facing the three of them like a defendant before a tribunal. "I understand you directly violated hospital protocol yesterday evening," Parker began without preamble. "I did," Sarah replied, straightening her spine. "I administered Nurazing to a child displaying identical symptoms to our previous cases from Happy Horizons Day Camp, without waiting for laboratory confirmation or transport to the emergency department." "And you stand by this decision?" Parker asked, his eyes sharp. "Absolutely. The child would have suffered irreversible brain damage or death had I followed the protocol. I made a medical decision based on my training and the specific circumstances." Dr. Gaines leaned forward. "You can't possibly know." Parker held up a hand, silencing her. "As it happens, Miss Reeves, preliminary testing confirms your suspicions. Maya Roberts was indeed suffering from exposure to the same industrial chemical as our previous cases. Happy Horizons has been shut down pending a full investigation." Sarah exhaled slowly, relief washing through her. At least she had been right, not that being right would save her job. Parker continued, "This puts us in a complicated position. On one hand, you clearly violated protocol. On the other hand, your actions unquestionably saved a child's life." He gestured to the man Sarah didn't recognize. "This is Thomas Roberts, Maya's father." The man stood, his eyes red-rimmed from what appeared to be a night without sleep. "My daughter is alive because of you, Miss Reeves. The doctors at the hospital told us that if you had waited even 10 more minutes," he trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "Mr. Roberts is also," Parker added with a grimace, "a senior partner at Littman, Roberts and Hayes, the largest medical malpractice firm in Arizona." Sarah's stomach dropped. Was this why they had brought her in? Was the hospital facing a lawsuit despite her intervention? Thomas Roberts stepped forward. "I've spent 15 years suing hospitals and medical professionals. I know exactly how protocols like the one you broke are created, not primarily to protect patients, but to protect institutions from liability." His voice grew harder. "I also know that my daughter would be dead or permanently brain damaged if you had followed that protocol." He turned to face Parker and Dr. Gaines. "I came here today to make something abundantly clear. If Sarah Reeves faces any disciplinary action whatsoever for saving my daughter's life, I will personally lead a lawsuit against this hospital for the deaths of Miguel Sanchez and Anna Chen, deaths that could have been prevented if your protocol hadn't delayed treatment." The room fell silent. Parker and Dr. Gaines exchanged glances. Furthermore, Roberts continued, I've already spoken with the families of both children. They're prepared to join the suit if necessary. I've also contacted the medical board and explained the situation. They're very interested in reviewing this protocol. Dr. Gaines paled visibly. Parker cleared his throat. That won't be necessary, Mr. Roberts. We've already decided to revise our protocol regarding the administration of Nurazine in suspected contamination cases. Sarah could hardly believe what she was hearing. The CEO turned to her. Miss Reeves, not only will there be no disciplinary action, but I would like to offer you a position on the committee that will be reformulating our emergency response protocols. Your practical experience would be invaluable. The meeting concluded shortly after, with handshakes and awkward smiles all around. As Sarah walked out of the administrative wing, a strange lightness filled her chest. Not only had she kept her job, but she had been given a platform to potentially prevent similar tragedies in the future. Thomas Roberts caught up with her in the hallway. I meant what I said in there, he told her quietly. My daughter is alive because you chose compassion over protocol. I won't forget that. Sarah nodded, still processing everything that had happened. Thank you for speaking up for me. Actually, he said with a hesitant smile, I was hoping to thank you properly. Maybe over dinner. When you're ready, of course. The unexpected invitation caught Sarah off guard. Thomas Roberts was undeniably attractive, tall with kind eyes and a certain intensity that spoke of passion and determination. In any other circumstance, she might have said yes immediately. I was supposed to leave for vacation today. She stumbled over the words. Oregon coast, already booked. His face fell slightly. Of course, I understand. Sarah found herself adding quickly, but I'll be back in 10 days. Maybe then. His smile returned, brightening his tired eyes. I'd like that. Maya would too, if that's okay. She keeps asking about her angel paramedic. I'd love to see how she's doing, Sarah replied honestly. 6 months later, Sarah stood at the podium in Mercy General's Conference Center, addressing a crowd of medical professionals from across the state. Behind her, a PowerPoint slide displayed the new emergency response protocol that had been implemented, one that balanced procedural caution with practical flexibility. The Compassionate Response Initiative, she explained, acknowledges that medical professionals must sometimes make difficult decisions based on their training, experience, and the specific circumstances they encounter. It provides a framework for those decisions without sacrificing patient care on the altar of bureaucratic caution. In the front row, Thomas Roberts watched her with undisguised pride. Maya beside him, healthy and vibrant, her yellow backpack, now decorated with paramedic patches rather than butterflies, at her feet. The new protocol had already saved lives. 2 months after its implementation, a school bus had been exposed to the same industrial chemical, and first responders, empowered by the revised guidelines, had administered Nurazine on site. All 27 children had recovered completely. As Sarah concluded her presentation to enthusiastic applause, she reflected on how a single moment of moral courage had cascaded into such profound change, not just in hospital policy, but in her personal life as well. Thomas met her at the edge of the stage, taking her hand in his. Dr. Gaines actually smiled during your presentation, he whispered with a grin. I think hell might be freezing over. Sarah laughed. She's coming around. Change is hard, especially when you've invested in the old way of doing things. Maya tugged at Sarah's sleeve. Are we still going for ice cream after this? She asked hopefully. You promised. Absolutely, Sarah assured her, squeezing Thomas's hand. A promise is a promise. As they walked out together, Sarah thought about the choice she had made that summer evening in Madison Park. One moment of choosing humanity over protocol had not only saved Maya's life, but had transformed Sarah's own, in ways she could never have anticipated. She had gained a platform to effect real change in emergency medicine. She had found love with Thomas, whose fierce advocacy complemented her practical compassion, and in Maya, she had found a bond that defied simple categorization, not quite motherhood, but something equally precious. Sometimes the most significant crossroads in life aren't marked with signs. Sometimes they appear as small moments with enormous stakes. A child convulsing in a deserted park, blood trickling between your fingers, and just minutes to decide. Follow the rules or follow your heart. What would you do if faced with such a choice? Would you risk everything, career, reputation, future, to save a life? Or would you follow the protocol, protect yourself, and pray that the system works as intended? In the moment of decision, when seconds count and lives hang in the balance, the answer reveals not just your professional ethics, but the very essence of your humanity. Was Sarah's choice to save Maya worth the risk? Share your thoughts below. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe for more life-changing tales every week. Your support fuels our passion to bring these powerful stories to life. Don't miss our next moral dilemma. Turn on notifications now.